This is how North Korea welcomed the new year, with a fireworks display, much like the rest of the world. But it is leader Kim Jong-un's New Year's Day address that is drawing all the attention. If 2017 was marked by fiery rhetoric and rising tensions because of North Korea's nuclear ambitions, 2018 may bring more of the same.
The
US mainland is within the range of our nuclear strike, and the nuclear button is put on the desk in my office at all times. They should clearly understand that this is never a threat, but a reality.
Kim has called for the mass production and deployment of more nuclear warheads and missiles. But weapons experts agree that North Korea may not yet have the technology to miniaturize a nuclear warhead and mount it on a missile that can re-enter the atmosphere. While Kim's speech made no mention of a nuclear atmospheric test, he reiterated the claim that North Korea is now a nuclear power. In stark contrast to the hostile remarks to the United States is the conciliatory overture from Kim Jong-un to South Korea. He's even suggested dialogue between the two sides, something South Korean President Moon Jae-in proposed several months ago and which North Korea ignored.
We should actively create an atmosphere to move forward with the national reconciliation and reunification. Improving ties between the North and the South is an urgent issue that not only the North and South want, but everyone else wants.
He suggested North Korea is prepared to send its athletes to participate in the upcoming Winter Olympics and Paralympics in Pyeongchang next month. South Korea has responded to these proposals positively, saying it hopes communication, which has been severed between the two sides for nearly 2 years, can be restored.
South Korea's presidential office welcomes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's New Year's speech today, which expressed willingness to send a delegation to the Pyeongchang Olympics and proposed talks as he acknowledged the need for improvement in inter-Korean ties.
But analysts say the olive branch may be a ploy to gain some political ground.
North Korea wants to drive a wedge between Seoul and Washington, at the same time try to dilute the impact of economic sanctions.
North Korea is facing its toughest sanctions yet, including a cap on petrol imports as punishment for its nuclear and missile tests last year. Kim Jong-un's speech, while it seems to lay open a path to dialogue with South Korea, is proof that North Korea's nuclear ambitions are here to stay.
All right, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, one of the world leaders, now praising the Iranian protesters who are challenging the rule of their country's hardline regime. Meanwhile, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un with another warning for the United States today as part of his New Year's address to the people. What a warm and lovely message he had, saying he always has a nuclear button on his desk and once again claiming the rogue regime has missiles capable of striking anywhere in the United States. Former U.S. Ambassador to the UN John Bolton saying, well, we've heard this before.
It's propaganda from Kim Jong-un. This is his regular New Year's speech, and obviously he has seen the conversation in the United States that looks at possible preemptive military force, not as the most attractive option, but as an option that we definitely have to use if they don't give up their nuclear weapons program. So we need a very careful calibration exactly what the North's capabilities are.
Rich Edson back from the warmth of the winter White House and travels with the president back in D.C. With more. The president was asked last night, talked a little bit last night about North Korea.
He did talk about it, responding, Leland, to what we heard from the New Year's Day address from Kim Jong-un, which was essentially threats against the United States, though an offer to calm the tension on the Korean peninsula. In that address, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un bragged about his regime's nuclear and ballistic missile development. He says, quote, "The entire United States is within range of our nuclear weapons. A nuclear button is always on my desk. This is not reality, not a threat. This year, we should focus on mass-producing nuclear warheads and ballistic missiles for operational deployment. These weapons will be used only if our society is threatened." Though the leader, who regularly launches ballistic missiles over Japan, says North and South Korea should calm the situation there. He says, quote, "When it comes to North-South relations, We should lower the military tensions on the Korean peninsula to create a peaceful environment. Both the North and the South should make efforts. He even says North and South Korea should meet to discuss North Korea sending athletes to the Olympics in South Korea next month. President Trump, in response to all this, says, "We'll see." His administration says it continues pressing other countries to cut off North Korea. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says the U.S. and North Korea would begin discussions only when Kim changes his behavior, Leland.
Yeah, some discussion that olive branch, the South, may be trying to sort of drive a wedge between the United States and South Korea. That's in one side of the world. The other side of the world, we have these Iranian protests turning deadly. President Trump responding to them very differently than his predecessor, right?
That's what his administration is contending. That will be different, though it remains to see what exactly this administration is going to do. As Iran's president is now saying, they have the right to protest, though the demonstrators, as he said, should not make the public feel concerned about their lives and security. Iranian state media report more than 10 are dead, and there was an attempt to seize military and police installations. Meanwhile, world leaders are weighing in on what's going on in Iran, in particular Iran's enemies, like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel.
Brave Iranians are pouring into the streets. They seek freedom, they seek justice, they seek the basic liberties that have been denied to them for decades. Iran's cruel regime wastes tens of billions of dollars spreading hate. This money could have built schools and hospitals. No wonder mothers and fathers are marching in the streets. The regime is terrified of them, of their own people.
Thousands are protesting a poor economy while Iran engages in costly proxy wars across the Middle East. These are the largest protests in Iran since 2009.
Yeah, since the Green Revolution. Important question, though. We discussed this a little bit yesterday. We've heard from President Trump on Twitter a number of times supporting these Iranian protesters, saying the world is watching. We just heard from the vice president also saying that we can't let these protesters down, saying the United States in some way, yet to be determined, is going to stand up for these protesters. What about the reaction from Europe? So often it's the Europeans who can't wait to jump out in front of any kind of human rights violations. You've got people being killed in the streets of Iran. Anything from the Brits, the Germans, the French, the Italians?
Well, the criticism that we've heard from so many in the United States about the Europeans is that they have increased their business with Iran as a result of the Iran nuclear deal, and they have been more hesitant to criticize the Iran regime as a result of that. As the United States moves forward and it says that it's now no longer certifying that Iran is complying with the Iran nuclear agreement, the Europeans have very much wanted the United States to stay in that Iran nuclear deal as part of the increased business that they've had there, though also the Europeans point out if the United States gets out of the Iran nuclear deal, the problem there is then they've gotten the upfront benefits, the Iranian regime. However, the United States, by reimposing sanctions, a lot of that money is already gone to the Iran regime.
Yeah, and as Prime Minister Netanyahu pointed out, we know where at least a lot of that money was spent by the Iranian government. Rich Edson, Washington, D.C., more on this as it happens, certainly at the State Department this week. Thanks, Rich.
Good evening, I'm Mike Emanuel in for Brett Baer. Action on two fronts tonight regarding North Korea. The U.S. is slapping more sanctions on the Hermit Kingdom, and Russia says it is ready and waiting to mediate talks between the U.S. and the Kim Jong-un regime. Correspondent Rich Edson's outside the Winter White House in Mar-a-Lago, Florida, where the president is spending his holiday. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, Mike. And President Trump largely focusing on his domestic agenda through Twitter today. However, it was international events that drew the attention of his administration. The Trump administration refuses to take a holiday from sanctioning North Koreans. The Treasury Department announced the United States is sanctioning two it describes as key leaders of North Korea's unlawful weapons programs. In a statement, quote, Treasury is targeting leaders of North Korea's ballistic missile programs as part of our maximum pressure campaign to isolate the DPRK and achieve a fully denuclearized Korean peninsula. The announcement follows Friday's United Nations Security Council resolution that imposed new sanctions on North Korea, targeting its money flow. a move North Korea equated to an act of war. International reports say the Russian government is offering to mediate between the U.S. and North Korea. The State Department failed to respond to requests to comment on the offer. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has said North Korea must earn its way back to the negotiating table, starting with a halt on its missile and nuclear tests. Before leaving for his holiday in South Florida, the president promised persistent pressure on Kim Jong-un.
There is much more work to do. America and its allies will take all necessary steps to achieve a denuclearization and ensure that this regime cannot threaten the world.
While his administration focuses on North Korea, the president spent the day at Trump International, playing golf with Republican Senator David Perdue of Georgia, PGA Pro player Bryson DeChambeau, and former PGA Pro Dana Quigley. The administration describes this as a working vacation. On policy from the president this morning, a tweet, quote, based on the fact that the very unfair and unpopular individual mandate has been terminated as part of our tax cut bill, which essentially repeals over time Obamacare, the Democrats and Republicans will eventually come together and develop a great new health care plan. Republicans already tried to replace Obamacare, thwarted by insufficient support in their own party. The White House says the president will discuss his 2018 legislative strategy the first week in January, with House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell at Camp David. The administration says it will also push an infrastructure package. Some Democrats say they are willing to work with Republicans.
We've got an aging infrastructure with potholes and highways that aren't working and bridges that are in trouble. We need to do something together to fix our infrastructure if we're going to stay competitive as a nation.
Another quiet evening for the president on a day that involved only 3 tweets. The one on health care, one claiming that the FBI investigation into collusion with the Russian government during the 2016 campaign is tainted, and one claiming that his tax proposal will increase economic growth next year. Mike?
Rich Edson in beautiful West Palm Beach. Rich, many thanks.
This is how North Korea on a missile that can re-enter the atmosphere. While Kim's speech made no mention of a nuclear atmospheric test, he reiterated the claim that North Korea is now a nuclear power. In stark contrast to the hostile remarks to the United States is the of North Korea's nuclear ambitions. 2018 may bring more of the same.
The US mainland is within the range of our nuclear strike, and the nuclear button is put on the desk in my office at all times. They should clearly understand.
Korea welcomed the new year with a fireworks display, much like the rest of the world. But it is leader Kim Jong-un's New Year's Day address that is drawing all the attention. If 2017 was marked by fiery rhetoric and rising tensions, because
that this is never a threat, but a reality.
Kim has called for the mass production and deployment of more nuclear warheads and missiles. But weapons experts agree that North Korea may not yet have the technology to miniaturize a nuclear warhead and mount